Why is it that some people go through adversity and suffer, while others kind of get back up on their feet and thrive? So a critical career challenge would be something that is either somebody being fired, being demoted, being outsourced, whatever, or being at a very, very high risk of becoming that, okay? Let's assume this will be the definition of a critical career challenge. I've done some research around international executives, their critical career challenges, and how long it takes them to recover. And the interesting thing is that many people have gone through something like that, and the research varies between 60 to 70%. So 60 to 70% of all executives in their career have at least one critical career challenge. And I think that's an important data point for each executive, because what is coming to them is kind of normal. It is the price of being an executive. It's a risk. So, and what you'll see is I'm presenting a model here that's called the 7 spheres of resilience. And the idea is not to say, this is the latest and greatest and forget all other models. This is the idea to really say, there's so much good stuff out there that has nothing to do with this current hype around resilience that is from the 1930s, from the 1950s. It's been out there forever, but it is valid. And so I've tried to pull together everything that is valid into a coherent model, and that is very, very open for other stuff, right? So I'm not advocating here, this is great and everything else is not, right? So that's not the entire point. So if we go to critical career challenges or critical life challenges, one thing we can be for sure, if you fall, you'll be there, floor, right? So there's rock bottom and you hit it, and then resilience is kind of the art of coming back up. So a little bit about myself. And I've been a manager for pretty much 16 years or so in different leadership roles. So what do you do to relax? Exactly. You train for an Ironman. And the self-image that I had about myself is, holy shit, I'm Batman. I'm really cool material. What can happen to me? I mean, I just know how it works, right? And then one fine morning, I woke up and I had lost a large part of my hearing. But in hindsight, that was a turning point, because for the first time in my professional life, I could not solve a problem by working more or sleeping less. So I was thinking, what am I doing here actually, right? And even more so, who am I doing it for? On the one hand side, how much can I take on? And the second question is, for what reason? But the question is, do you do it for the right reasons, or do you do it because you're running something that we call a dysfunctional belief? And what is resilience? Resilere. That's a Latin word, and that means to bounce back, right? So you're impacting something and you're bouncing back. And think of that sponge. You can do a lot of things with that sponge. As long as you don't burn it or cut it, it will always go back into its original shape. That's the idea behind that. This is obviously in Taiwan. And this is a building called Taipei 101. In 2009, it used to be the highest building in the earth. Since then, a lot of things have happened. Now, what's the problem with Taiwan and skyscrapers? How many earthquakes a month? It is not because it is so robust. It is not because it is a massive structure that cannot be touched by anything. It has a pendulum mounted between 88th and 92nd floor, weighing 600 tons. And this pendulum sits on hydraulic cylinders controlled by a microprocessor, and when there's an earthquake, the pendulum is put into a motion which is a counter movement to the shock waves of the earthquake. What could be an equivalent of this for human beings? Resilience is not about you're not hit by a shock wave. You're not hit by adversity. That is not the point. Life is not like that. We have all gone through critical career challenges. Our clients go through critical life challenges. We go through these challenges. There's no way to say it's not affecting me. But what we can control is the duration and the depth of the impact. It's not about being tough alone, but it is about how do you actively manage yourself. So self-control, self-management is a key component to that. And it asks the question, how do people lead successful lives? Long and successful lives. What do you think are factors that lead to a long, successful life where you have overcome a lot of crises? No correlation between personality and the job that you're doing. Self-discipline actually came across as being the #1 factor for having a long and successful life. Ambition, So setting yourself goals, stable relationships, stable positive relationships, relationships that give you energy as opposed to taking away energy from you. Purpose, rightly so. And then there is something that many managers struggle with, the term self-efficacy. So there was another metaphor that struck me, and this was, when you're resilient, you'll be like that beacon in the sea, okay? So you're just untouchable. So this guy is obviously standing there, waiting for something to happen. What he didn't see was that behind him was approaching the mother of all waves, and totally eradicated the place where he was standing. He jumped in the last second. He was safe, all fine. But what that told me is, if you're only focusing on being tough, it is a question of time until something is tougher than you. For many managers, for many leaders, that's an important thing to realize, that if you only do that, that is not resilience. That is toughness, and that's a different thing. So one element is obviously having self-control and discipline. But the other angle is being reflective and being conscious of yourself. So all of that can be a crisis. What happens is some sort of a performance drop, right? Because you're thinking about your inner world as opposed to you're focusing on the outer world. As a result, three things can actually happen. One is damage. Then there's the way to recover, right? So you go back to normal, and you've kind of metabolized what happened to you. And then there is the phenomenon of growth. In medicine, there is a term called post-traumatic growth. So when you're thrown into the deep end, and you and the decision is sink or swim, and you kind of swam, and you made it, then you know, and I think you said that, second time around, it's easier, yeah, because you know you have that, and that is what is referred to as post-traumatic growth. I don't think it's possible to avoid that impact, but it is possible to avoid how long you stay in the pit, if that makes sense. 1/3, this natural capability of recovery. 2/3, this tendency of being permanently damaged. And the question is, can this be consciously influenced? That work-life balance thing has a problem, because it is a balance between work and life, meaning when you work, you don't live. What we're trying to get to is to something that is a life balance, and how the different pieces are interconnected, and what gives you energy, what takes away energy from you. If you believe in God, do you live longer? Now that could be an interesting discussion. The short answer is no. But if you engage yourself for others, for example, in the context of a church, you do live longer. Doing something that has no particular value for yourself, but for others. To which degree do you feel that you're becoming a better version of yourself? The question with soul is, are you as happy as you can be? You don't know exactly how to survive the next day, and he stands there and says, I want to find a purpose, I want to do this for a reason. That is not necessarily saying you're suffering. You can be okay and be, I don't know, skeptical or cynical or whatever, and don't have that active purpose. But to finding it and having access to this resource is a very, very strong piece of energy. The sense of coherence is there when three things are given. The one is comprehensibility. So I need to be able to understand cause and effect of what's going on. Okay? The second is manageability. I need to have an idea that I can influence what is happening, and even if it is in the slightest way, shape, or form. And the third, that is meaningfulness. So there is something that it is good for, some sort of purpose that I have that is there. Why am I doing this? Why do we need to do this? Meaningfulness. The 7 spheres of resilience. So the way that we are kind of wired internally has an influence on how we cope with things. So what is the story that we tell about our lives, and what kind of role we are playing in that? So to which degree, what is my inner stance? Is it like, I'm a shaper of my own destiny? Is it that internal locus of control? Or am I more in victim mode? Resources. So how can I influence myself? What is it that I have developed in terms of strategies in order to really have an impact on my inner world? How we can use our body to influence the brain, and how our thinking influences the body. In the sense of, when you're an executive, the question becomes, the higher you come, the more power you acquire, the more difficult it becomes to really find somebody that you can show your vulnerability to. So the question is, how can you maintain the relationships that you once had but your lifestyle is just, or our lifestyle or our client's lifestyle is just in a way that is very, very easy to lose it on the way. What kind of purpose is it? Or is it just to fulfill a shareholder value target of somebody that I don't even know? Personality obviously is the core in the sense that personality is really, really hard to change on a conscious level. The body is a resource, relationships are resources, purpose is a resource, and then there's kind of the toolbox of all the good stuff that is there that combines all the different layers of resources. So that's one other way of looking at it, right? So this is the inner core, your present state, and then what are the different strategies to influence yourself. But if you want to quit smoking or if you want to run a marathon, one good way to do this is to, first of all, sign up and then tell everybody. And then make them ask you, how are you doing? At least you're putting your skin in the game, right? You're putting yourself up for failure, but you're also being held accountable by your support group. What is resilience actually about? It's about how to constructively deal with setbacks. But I have a coaching now. Can I be present in the coaching, or do I have to do something in order to manage myself? So stress resistance, low. So I'm kind of here. What's the good thing about that? I mean, it doesn't feel good, does it? I mean, when you're in there, it doesn't necessarily feel good. But what's the good thing? What's really the good thing about it? Exactly. You're more likely to be aware, okay? And because you're aware, you're more likely to develop strategies in order to cope. They are normally very open to learn and to develop strategies. You have somebody that is very much on the left side, on the resilient side of the scale, okay? So this person is just cool. You know, not much happening. I mean, everything that is happening outside, this person would not be affected much. Well, you're not very stressed, right? That's a good thing. I mean, you're at ease. Bad thing is, you're so much at ease that maybe other people get upset. Or you have not felt a need to develop any coping strategies because you have never felt that you're actually going down. My experience is that these people don't necessarily show up in classes like that. They get sent. They get sent because of the people they lead. Yeah? Because they are burning out. They don't have a burnout problem. They have a burnout problem in their team. Yeah? Are you more optimistic? So this is the glass half full kind of thing. Or are you more less optimistic? Glass half empty, these things could go wrong, let's have a focus on that. What is it that they typically feel? This is what they've been describing out of a selection of different reactions. So feeling as a victim, so which is this, you know, external locus of control, I'm a victim. Fear, insomnia, so sleeplessness, depression, focus on being busy, so distract yourself kind of with work. Increased excitability, so for somebody who has been calm to be more outbursting or something like that. Emotional paralysis, so like a feeling of being numb and don't feeling anything anymore. Catastrophizing, that's something that's there. Social withdrawal. Hopelessness, increased alcohol consumption, and only 2% admitted about suicidal ideas. And I'm also doing some research around executive suicide because there's been an increasing number of suicides in Western Europe. We have decoupled the list of life events from the actual graph. And please note that you're discussing the graph, not the life events. So that means that the person sharing can determine what he or she is sharing. Okay? And the emphasis is not so much put on what has happened, but what did I learn? So that means you can speak in very abstract terms, not going into all the details of your life, and it can still be meaningful. Because we always tend to look at things from the negative lens. Right? You know, we're talking about traumas. The question is there something that you would call a magical moment that you have in your biography? Some moment where kind of everything was great. Do you have that accessible to you? Is there moments of excellence where you say, yep, this is mine? Personality is what we are born with, and it's defined in the first 7 years of our lives. It only changes slightly. Then the next thing that happens to us in life is our biography. It's the story that we tell about ourselves. This defines who we are in every present moment. And this is what I call attitude. And just the sheer fact of telling your life story has a positive effect on the emotional stability of clients. Yeah? Because you are kind of diving into the stuff that you've been going through. And if you look at that, this is two things. Either they were positive things, so like magical moments, great things that you can go back to as a resource, or they were terribly negative, or they were negative things, but the sheer fact that you're here tells us that you survived somehow, that you kind of went through it, meaning if you went through that, you will be able to go through other things. By working on your biography, what you're actually doing is you're kind of zooming in and looking at the different life events and how they informed your decision making, and also how they informed what you think about life as such. And if you think about helping a client go through a difficult situation in their life, or if you even think about counseling, trauma therapy, something like that, the thing that you do is you change the emotional connotation of a past event. That's what you do. So you actually change the memory. A list of life events that happened to you. Think about your life energy at that particular point in time on a scale from +10 to -10. There's so many things to attitude really, but I really want to limit it on two different aspects. There's an external event, and then there's the reaction of our inner world to this external event. The problem is, since we are not machines, it is not just that the external event is there, it is the way how we respond to it where we're actually facing our inner enemy. So there's all this inner arguing going on, right? So when it talks about what is it that we formed as a fundamental assumption about life. So assuming the following scenarios, two people meet in a so-called social interaction for the first time. Which parts of the brain get invoked first? It is the area of the brain that is responsible for processing numbers. Compared to yourself, exactly. How do I measure up in terms of status? You know, all that determines, am I looking up to this person or is this person looking up to me?